A cold silence had settled over Aurelia 3, broken only by the crackle of distant fires and the low moan of the wind through shattered towers. The Voraks were gone from the surface, vanished into the sky. The unnatural, pressing fear they emanated had lifted, leaving behind a hollow, aching relief. In the Data Chapel Command Center, the tactical screen told the true story. The red blips had streamed upward, coalescing into a dense, protective sphere around the massive, pulsing hive node in low orbit. Counselor Alara watched Captain Min-Su. He studied the screen, his face a mask of calm calculation. She now saw the weight behind that calm. It was the patience of a predator, or a mountain. "You cannot attack that," she said, her voice thin. "Your 3 ships. The combined Vorax fleet around it is 20 times what you faced before. It is a fortress. You have saved our world. They are leaving. Let them go." Min-Su didn't look at her. If it leaves, it learns. It learns that when it meets resistance, it can retreat and consume elsewhere. It learns that the only cost of its hunger is fuel. It does not get to learn that. He turned to Hai Jin. "Options?" Hai Jin's fingers flew. The node's core is a dense organic mass, heavily shielded by living armor and that fleet. Energy weapons would be dissipated. Projectiles would be intercepted. A sustained assault by a full Concord battle group might crack it in a week. "We have 3 ships and maybe an hour before it jumps." "Then we don't crack it from the outside," Min-Su said. He zoomed the display in on the node. It was a grotesque, brain-like structure, covered in throbbing veins and spiked defensive turrets that were grown, not built. "We break it from within." He began to speak, outlining a plan of such stark, suicidal simplicity that Alara felt her knees weaken. The Unyielding, his own command ship, would lead a direct assault. It would use its overwhelming mass and armor to plow through the defensive fleet, a blunt force trauma to clear a path. It would aim not to destroy, but to ram, to embed itself like a spearhead into the node's outer layer. The Resolute would follow, providing covering fire and deploying all remaining drop pods not to the surface, but into the wound created by the Unyielding. Those pods would carry Sergeant G.A. and every available Marine into the heart of the beast, to plant demolition charges at the neural ganglia. The Dauntless, the most nimble of the 3, would hang back, drawing as much fire as possible, and would be the extraction vessel. If any extraction was possible, it is a death sentence for the Unyielding. Alara breathed. "It is a mission profile," Min-Su corrected softly. He finally looked at her. "My ship is a tool. Its purpose is to protect life. This is the most efficient use of it remaining." He opened a general comms channel. On the audio feed, Alara could hear the bridge crews of the other ships, the Marine barracks. He explained the plan in the same basic, clear terms he used for everything. There were no questions, only acknowledgments. "Sergeant G.A.?" G.A.'s voice came back, steady, a background hum of Marines preparing gear behind her. "We're ready, Captain. Just give us the hole to punch. You'll have it." Min-Su out. He stood from the console. For a moment, he was just a man, a tired man from a terrible world, in a room that was too delicate for him. He nodded to Alara. "Counselor, the surface is secure. Your people are safe. The rest is our job." He walked out, heading for the shuttle that would take him back to his ship. Alara could say nothing. What words were there? In orbit, the 3 human ships formed up. They did not look like a glorious armada. They looked like 3 old bricks about to be thrown at a stained glass window. The Vorax swarm around the hive node stirred. Sensing the impending attack, the Unyielding's engines flared, a blue-white star igniting at its stern. It did not weave. It did not fire first. It simply accelerated, a giant fist thrown at the heavens. The Resolute and Dauntless followed a kilometer behind. Spreading out, the Varax moved to intercept, a cloud of chitin and green fire. Bioplasma washed over the Unyielding's forward shields, then its armor. Plates heated, glowed red, melted in places. The ship shuddered, but did not deviate. Its own guns fired, not at the ships, but at the space ahead, a storm of tungsten and explosives clearing a literal path of shattered debris. From the surface, through powerful scopes, Alara and her people watched. They saw the tiny, brilliant light of the human ship pushing into the swirling, monstrous dark. It was a candle against a tidal wave. The Unyielding struck the outer layer of the hive node. There was no explosion. It was a collision of nightmares. The organic structure buckled, tore, and the ship buried its front, third deep into the pulsing flesh. It looked like a dagger stuck in a heart. Instantly, tendrils and defensive growths began to snake over it, trying to digest the metal intruder. From the stricken Unyielding, and from the Resolute behind it, a final salvo of drop pods fired. Dozens of them, streaking into the ragged, gaping wound. They disappeared into the organic cavern dot inside the hive node. It was a hellscape of wet, living walls, corrosive atmosphere, and shrieking vibrations that were the node's pain and fury. Gia's squad, joined by others, blasted their way out of their pods. They didn't have a map. They followed the thickest clusters of neural fibers, the ones that glowed with sickly green energy. They planted shaped charges as they went, moving deeper into the hot, throbbing darkness. Around them, the very walls convulsed. Smaller, internal Varax defenders hatched from sacks and attacked. The fighting was close, brutal, and fought in night vision green and the flash of muzzle fires. On the bridge of the dying Unyielding, Min-Su held onto his command chair as the ship was crushed and dissolved around him. Alert screamed. "All pods away, Captain," Hyjin reported, her voice tight. "The Resolute is falling back. Dauntless is moving in for extraction pickup." "Good," Min-Su said. He looked at the main screen, now showing only the pulsing, angry flesh consuming the camera view. "Initiate final core purge. Let's not leave them anything to snack on." On the surface, the minutes stretched like years. Then a new star blossomed in the sky. It was not the clean flash of a reactor breach. It was a green and orange eruption, an ugly, spreading stain of light that silently consumed the hive node, the surrounding swarm, and the brave, broken ship at its center. The shock wave of debris would take days to clear. Silence returned, deeper than before. Ilara stared upward, tears cutting paths through the dust on her face. They had done it. They had won. At a cost she could barely comprehend. Then, a smaller fire-eye light caught her eye. Dozens of them, streaking down through the atmosphere like falling stars, wreathed in flame. The drop pods. The Dauntless had retrieved them from the corpse of the node just in time. They slammed into the planes outside the arcology, one after another, in a chorus of final, defiant impacts. Alara was among the first to reach the landing zone. The pods were smoking, scarred by acid and heat. They cracked open. Out stumbled the Marines, armor blackened, some carrying wounded. And there, supported by Tae-Min, was Sergeant G.A. Her armor was rent, her face smudged with soot and blood, but she was alive. She looked up, saw the clear sky where the nightmare had been, and gave a single, exhausted nod. Days later, in the slowly healing plaza, a simple ceremony was held. Captain Min-Su and the crew of the Unyielding were remembered, not with Aurelian poetry, but with a moment of silence so profound it felt like the planet itself was holding its breath. After, Ilara found G.A. out of her armor, wearing a simple gray uniform. The burn on her neck was already a pink scar. "We owe you everything?" Alara said, the words feeling too small. "How can we repay such a debt?" G.A. looked around at the Aurelians beginning to rebuild, at the 2 remaining human ships in orbit, quiet and watchful. She smiled, a small, genuine thing. "Just say hello. That's all we ever wanted. Not to be monsters in the dark, just neighbors." Alara held out a slender, 4-fingered hand, a gesture of peace and greeting in her culture. She did not know if the humans had such a custom. Ga looked at the hand for a second. Then she reached out and took it, her own grip careful, mindful of her strength, but firm. It was a handshake across the abyss of experience, across fear and gratitude, between a child of gentle heavens and a child of a death world. Above them, the sky was clear. The call had been answered. The long quarantine was over. The command center was a converted Aurelian data chapel, its walls still shimmering with gentle, abstract art. Now they were overlaid with harsh, glowing tactical maps brought in by the humans. Captain Min-Su stood before the main display, his presence making the delicate room feel suddenly cramped and serious. Counselor Alara stood beside him, trying to read the stark red and green symbols. On the screen, the green dots, human squads, were methodically pushing back the swirling masses of red that represented the Vorax. It was slow, brutal work, sector by sector. The humans fought like surgeons with hammers, effective but devastating to the surroundings. "Your people fight with remarkable determination," Alara said carefully, watching as a green dot labeled J cleared a residential spire. "It's not determination," Min-Su said, his eyes never leaving the screen. His voice was a low, steady rumble. "It's procedure. The Varax are a hive-minded, biologically aggressive infestation. Our procedure for such things is established." Established from what? The question slipped out. Alara had to know. The mystery of these beings was now a weight as heavy as their armor. Min-Su was silent for a long moment. He tapped a command into a small datapad he carried. The main screen shifted. The beautiful, tortured landscape of Aurelia 3 vanished. In its place was a planet of breathtaking, terrifying violence. It was a world of furious blue oceans and continents, racked by storms visible from space. Deserts of orange sand bled into mountain ranges of jagged black rock. There were no smooth lines, no gentle gradients. "Earth," Min-Su said simply. He zoomed in. They saw forests where the trees grew thick as buildings, with canopies so dense they created perpetual twilight below. They saw vast plains where herds of animals the size of small ships moved, pursued by predators with 6 legs and bone-crusted hides. They saw oceans where leviathans breached, their forms shadowy and immense. "Our cradle?" Haijin said from her portable station. Her tone was not prideful, but factual. "Surface gravity, 1.1 times your standard. Atmospheric pressure, higher. Axial tilt creates seasons of extreme heat and extreme cold. The native microbiome is competitive." As she spoke, images flashed on a secondary screen. A creature like a fleshy flower, beautiful, luring a human with scent before snapping shut with teeth like thorns. A spider, its body the size of a human head, spinning silk stronger than steel. A virus modeled in animation that rewrote cellular functions with nightmarish speed. "Every living thing on our world," Min-Su continued, "is engaged in a constant, total war for survival. Plants release toxins to kill competing plants. Animals develop venom to drop prey 10 times their size. The weather itself tries to kill you. A sunny day can become a deadly hailstorm in minutes. A calm river can hide a current that will pull a land vehicle underwater." Alara stared, her mind recoiling. It was a world of pure, unrelenting hostility. A place where beauty was a trap and peace was a lie. How did you not just die? How did you become this? She gestured at him, at the soldiers on the screen. We adapted, Minsu said, turning away from the images of home. Our bones thickened. Our muscles densified. Our pain response became a manageable signal, not a disabling alarm. Our immune system. He paused, choosing his words. On most worlds, your bodies live in harmony with benign microbes. On Earth, every microbe is a potential invader. Our immune system does not ask questions. It attacks everything foreign with overwhelming force. It is why we can breathe your air, drink your water with no filters. To our bodies, your gentle biosphere is sterile. Alara thought of Taemin's quick, confident medical treatment. He wasn't a genius xenobiologist. His tools were built for a biological war zone, so intense it made the Varaks seem simple. But your minds, Alara whispered. The Varaks, they project fear. A psychic pulse that paralyzes my people with terror. Your soldiers? They ignore it. Hygiene answered this time. Our minds adapted too. On a death world, panic is death. Hesitation is death. To survive, we had to learn to process fear, anger, pain, all of it, and keep functioning. Our neurological pathways are insulated. The Varak's empathic assault is like a loud noise to us. Unpleasant, distracting, but not disabling. We are used to being afraid and acting anyway. Minsu zoomed the map back to Aurelia. The red was receding, but a massive, pulsating knot of it glowed in low orbit, the Varak's command node, the hive mind's local brain. That is the source. It coordinates them. It feels their losses. Right now, it is confused. It has never met something that does not run, does not freeze, does not break. Why are you telling me this? Alara asked, overwhelmed by the flood of terrifying context. Because you asked, Minsu said, meeting her gaze. His eyes were old, Alara realized. Old in a way his face did not show. And because you need to understand, you called for the galaxy's help. The civilized galaxy did not come. We did. You locked us away for being monsters. But a monster would have let you die. A monster would be feasting on the remains. He pointed a thick finger at the orbiting hive node. That is a monster. It consumes without reason, without end. We fight monsters. It is what our world made us to do. We did not build a community among the stars, because we were never invited. But community is not just sharing art and music. It is sharing strength. It is standing between your neighbor and the flood. Even, he said, his voice dropping, if your neighbor once locked their door against you. The words hung in the air, stripping away the last of Ilara's preconceptions. This wasn't a military intervention. It was an answer. A brutal, overwhelming, desperately needed answer to a plea they had no reason to honor. A priority alert chimed on Hyjin's console. Her calm face tightened. Captain, the hive node is reacting. It's pulling all remaining Varak's forces from the surface, consolidating them into a defensive formation around itself. It's preparing to leave. It's going to jump system, and it's going to take every living Varax on the planet with it as biomass. If it left, Aurelia would be saved. But the swarm would live to consume another world. A dozen worlds. The galaxy's problem would continue. Minsu's jaw tightened. He looked from the screen to Alara, then back to the pulsing red dot in the sky. No, he said, the word final as a stone dropping. It doesn't get to leave. The call was to save you, but the job is to kill it. He tapped his comm. All units, this is Minsu. Disengage surface mop up. Prepare for orbital extraction. New target is the hive node. We end this now. He was not asking for permission. He was stating the next step in the procedure. The procedure for saving a people and for killing a monster. Alara looked from the terrifying images of Earth to the resolute face of the man from that world, and she understood the full, terrifying, glorious cost of the prayer they had sent into the dark. They had begged for aid, and the aid had come with a price, the absolute, unwavering commitment to see the threat through to its end. The lower habitation zones of the Grand Arcology were not built for war. They were a network of wide, gently lit corridors, communal gardens under artificial suns, and quiet residential wings. Now, they were a claustrophobic maze of shattered glass, fallen greenery, and the panicked echoes of thousands of Aurelians fleeing deeper underground. The air recyclers, damaged, pumped to thin. Acrid smoke through the vents. Sergeant G.A.'s squad moved with a speed that seemed impossible in the heavy armor. Their booted feet, each step a definitive clang on the polished stone, ate up the distance. They did not speak. Hand signals flickered between them, a silent language of war. Their helmet lamps cut through the gloom, illuminating scenes of delicate beauty now draped in horror. Counselor Alara, carried along by a mix of duty and dazed shock, struggled to keep up. Her body, built for Aurelia's gentle pull, ached. The humans moved with a weight to them, a gravitational certainty even here. She saw one of them, a soldier named Taemin, according to his suit's faintly glowing tag, pause by a cluster of wounded Aurelians. A Vorax spike had pierced the shoulder of a young male who was trembling, his blue blood staining his silken tunic. Taemin knelt, his armor whirring softly. He didn't use a medical kit. From a port on his vambrace, he extended a small, glowing wand. He scanned the wound, his helmet tilting. Foreign biomatter present. Risk of neurotoxin. His voice, filtered, was matter-of-fact. He produced a hypospray, pressed it against the Aurelian's neck. The male flinched, and his trembling stopped, his eyes widening in surprise as the pain seemed to vanish. Taemin then, with a grip that looked terrifyingly strong but was controlled, snapped off the exposed part of the spike, applied a sealant foam from a canister, and moved on. The entire process took 15 seconds. "You know our biology?" Alara asked, breathless. Taemin's helmet turned toward her. "No, my scanner knows alien tissue. My medkit has broad-spectrum antitoxins and coagulants. It's made for things with more complex venom than this." He continued down the corridor. GA's voice crackled in Alara's own small comms unit, given to her by the sergeant. "Counselor, you should stay back. The target is close." But Alara had to see. She followed them around a final corner into a vast hydroponic garden. The towering columns of nutrient-fed plants were wilting, and in the center of the room, the floor was bulging upward, cracking. A deep, guttural roar vibrated through the stone. The floor erupted. The creature that heaved itself into the garden was a Varex behemoth, a command node for the local swarm. It was the size of a ground vehicle, a mound of armored segments and thrashing, drill-tipped appendages. Its central maw, ringed with grinding plates, dripped acidic saliva that hissed where it hit the ground. Its single massive eye glowed with a malicious green intelligence. The human squad didn't scatter. They fanned out, forming a loose half-circle. Their weapons came up, focus fire on the limb joints and the sensory cluster around the eye. GA ordered, her voice calm. "Avoid the mouth. Taemin, thermite on its back plate when it rears." The behemoth charged, surprisingly fast for its size, straight at GA. She stood her ground until the last second, then sidestepped with a burst of jet assist from her armor, the movement a blur. As the beast passed, 2 other soldiers fired. Not energy beams, but heavy, solid slugs. They struck the creature's leg joints with loud cracks. Chitin splintered. The behemoth stumbled, roaring in what seemed like pain and fury. It wasn't used to being hurt, not it thrashed, a limb whipping towards a soldier named Juan. He raised his armored arm. The limb connected. Elara heard the crunch, saw Juan get knocked back a meter, skidding along the floor. But he was up immediately, his arm reporting damage, but not broken. He fired again. The behemoth reared up, exposing its softer underbelly for a moment. Tae-min moved. He launched a small magnetic canister that stuck to the creature's back. A second later, a sun-bright point of white-hot light erupted, melting through the armor. The beast screamed, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling dot. It focused all its rage on G.A. It spat a glob of concentrated acid. G.A. dodged most of it, but a spatter hit her armored chestplate, and in a spray, across the side of her helmet. The metal sizzled. A drop landed on the small exposed seal where her helmet met her neck. She grunted, a short, sharp sound of pain. A wisp of smoke rose from her skin. G.A. Tae-min yelled, "I'm fine. Keep on it." She barked, but her voice was tight. She didn't stop firing. Elara watched in horror as the human sergeant fought on, a small, angry burn on her neck visibly blistering. To an Aurelian, that acid would have dissolved flesh to bone in seconds. To her, it was a wound. A bad one, but not a stopping one. The behemoth, weakened, bleeding ichor from a dozen crippling wounds, tried to burrow back down. G.A. saw its intention. Now, in the mouth. The squad concentrated their fire. The deafening cracks of their rifles filled the room. Slugs punched into the soft tissue inside the creature's maw. It convulsed, its roar choking off into a gurgle. Then, with a final shuddering tremor, it collapsed, its massive eye dimming. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of cooling thermite and the heavy breathing of the humans. G.I. walked unsteadily to a fallen planter and sat on its edge. Her movements were stiff. Tae-min was already there, his helmet retracting. His face was young, serious. He sprayed a coolant foam on her neck burn, then applied a thick, clear gel from a syringe. "Vorax digestive acid," he muttered, scanning it with his wand. "Lots of nasty proteins. Your nanites are already fighting the infection. You'll have a scar. Add it to the collection," G.A. said through clenched teeth. She reached up and retracted her own helmet. Her face was pale, sweat-drenched, but her eyes were clear. She took a deep breath of the acrid air. Not even coughing. Elara finally found her legs and approached, though she kept a respectful distance from the dead behemoth. She stared at G.A.'s neck, at the brutal red welt. You are injured. You must evacuate." G.A. looked at her, then almost smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Counselor, on my world, I was once stung by a river scorpion the size of your leg. Its venom paralyzes your nervous system in 30 seconds. I had to hike 5 kilometers to get the antivenom." She nodded at the dead behemoth. "This is a burn. It hurts. It will heal." Elara could not comprehend this. To her people, the body was a fragile thing. A simple fall could mean a broken limb. A common microbe could become a deadly plague. Their medicine was about gentle correction and prevention. This was something else. This was a body that viewed injury as a temporary inconvenience, pain as information, not a stop signal. "Why?" The word burst from Elara. "Why do this? You don't know us. Your world. It was quarantined. You must hate us for that." G.A. accepted a water tube from Tae-min and drank deeply. She looked around the ruined garden at the delicate, beautiful plants now crushed and burned. "Hate you?" She shook her head. "We don't have the energy to hate something for being afraid. We saw your call. You were dying. You asked for help. She stood up, testing her weight. Where we come from, if you hear a cry for help in the night, you answer it. Even if the person screaming is a stranger. Even if they're afraid of you. You answer it. Because the night is dark, and the things in it are real. And the only thing that keeps the dark back is people who are willing to stand against it. She sealed her helmet again, the face of a tired, pained woman replaced by the implacable visor of a soldier. Now we have to keep moving. This one was just a local brain. There will be more. Let's get your people to safety. Alara watched her go, leading her squad deeper into the arcology. The fear was still there, cold in her stomach. But now it was mixed with a staggering, humbling awe. These were not monsters. They were something perhaps more frightening. They were moral creatures, with a sense of duty forged in a furnace, so terrible it had made them almost indestructible. They had answered the cry, and they would keep answering it until the job was done, no matter the cost to themselves. The heavens had sent saviors with scars, and for the first time, Alara began to believe they might actually survive. The 3 human ships, designated unyielding, resolute, and dauntless by their own logs, slid into a high orbit over Aurelia 3 like 3 old, scarred watchdogs taking position. They ignored the elegant, crumbling space stations and the last flickers of the orbital defense grid. Their sensors, far cruder and more powerful than anything the Concord possessed, painted the planet below. They saw the Volux biomass spreading across the continents like a virulent purple mold, and they saw the frantic, bright clusters of Aurelian life signs blinking out. One by one, on the bridge of the unyielding, Captain Min Su stood before the main tactical display. He was a solid man, his posture relaxed but rooted, as if a strong wind couldn't move him. His face was calm, eyes taking in the carnage below with a focus that was analytical, not horrified. He wore a simple gray shipsuit, the only decoration a small, worn insignia on his collar, a stylized planet Earth, circled by a single star. Atmospheric composition is within nominal tolerance, reported his science officer, a woman named Hai Jin. Her fingers danced over her console. Nitrogen-oxygen mix, trace gases. Gravity reading 0.78 standard. It's a parkland, sir. Parkland was human slang for a low-gravity benign world. To them, Aurelia 3 looked soft. Vorax concentrations are highest here, here, and here, said Sergeant G.A., pointing to the display. She stood beside Minsu, her body humming with a readiness that was almost audible. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe knot. The largest Aurelian life sign clusters are in these arcologies. The Vorax are converging. It's a classic siege pattern. Min Su nodded. Standard breach and clear. Let's introduce ourselves. G.A., you have the ground. Take Dauntless's compliment. Hygiene, you're with me. We'll coordinate from here, can provide orbital overwatch. The Resolute will hold the line up here and swat any flies that get too curious. There were no dramatic speeches. The orders were given in simple, clear terms. The humans on all 3 ships moved. They had done this before, not against the Vorax, but against the terrors of their own world. This was just another infestation. Down on the surface, in the grand arcology of celestial harmony, the end had come. Counselor Alara had evacuated the Starlight's Grace, feeling it was cowardly to die in orbit when her people were dying below. Now she stood in the central plaza, a vast, open-air garden now stained with smoke. The elegant, spiraling towers were scarred by Vorax acid. The air, usually sweet with the scent of glowing moss, reeked of ozone and something rotten. The last peacekeepers, armed with low-yield energy pistols that did little more than annoy the Vorax warriors. were making their final stand at the barricaded main entrance. The Varaks were bipedal, but that was where any similarity to life ended. They were bundles of razor-sharp limbs and chitinous armor, their single baleful eye glowing with a hungry green light. They moved with a terrifying, skittering speed. A peacekeeper fired, the energy bolt splashing harmlessly on a Varak's chest plate. The creature lunged, a limb scything down. Alara looked away, a soft cry escaping her. Then the sky fell dot. It wasn't a ship. It was a dozen small, fiery meteors screening down from the clouds. They struck the plaza around the perimeter with earth-shaking thumps, cracking the beautiful mosaic walkways. They were not explosions, but impacts. The Varak's assault faltered, their hive-mind confusion a palpable thing in the air. The objects were pods, blunt and heavy. Steam hissed from their seams as they cracked open. From the nearest pod, a figure emerged. It was massive, a 2.5-meter tall suit of gunmetal gray armor, angular and thick. It moved with a heavy, deliberate grace. A visored helmet scanned the plaza. In its hands, it held not an energy rifle, but a large, blocky weapon with a thick barrel. A Vorax warrior, shrieking, launched itself at the newcomer. The armored figure didn't dodge. It turned and took the impact on its shoulder, the Varax's claws screeching against the plate, but not penetrating. A massive armored hand shot out, grabbed the Varax by one of its limbs, and with a sickening crack of chitin, flung the creature into a wall where it crumpled. Motionless, more figures emerged from the other pods. They fanned out with silent, practiced efficiency. Their weapons spoke with a sharp, deafening crack, 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 not the whine of energy. Where the bolts struck Varax, they didn't just burn. They ripped through, tearing limbs off, punching fist-sized holes in armor. It was brutally, shockingly physical. One of the armored giants strode towards the Aurelian barricade. The peacekeepers shrunk back, their weapons lowering in pure instinct. The figure stopped. There was a hiss of pressure, and the helmet retracted, sliding back into the collar. The face revealed was not a monster's. It was a woman's face, sweaty, with dark, sharp eyes. Sergeant G.A. She looked at the terrified, elegant aliens, their large eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe. "Are you in command here?" she asked, her voice amplified slightly by her suit's external speaker, but otherwise calm, almost ordinary. Alara, trembling, stepped forward. I am Counselor Alara. You are the Deathworlders." G.A. gave a small, grim nod. "Sergeant G.A., United Earth Response Corps. You called. We're here. We need you to get your people to a secure, centralized location. This area is not safe." As she spoke, a Varax skittered from behind a burning transport, leaping towards her exposed head. Alara screamed a warning. G.A. didn't turn. Her arm came up, faster than Alara's eye could follow. There was a solid thwack as the Varax impact on the armored forearm. Chia's other hand, still holding the large rifle, swung the weapon like a club. The stock connected with the Varax's head, and the creature dropped like a stone. She looked back at Alara as if nothing had happened. Centralized location. Now, please. Up in orbit, Min Su watched the tactical feed from GA's squad. Small green dots human markers moved through the arcology, pushing back the swarming red markers of the Vorax with methodical, unstoppable force. "Sir," Hygiene said from her station, "we're picking up a massive biosignature moving underground, heading straight for the largest concentration of Aurelian refugees in the lower habitation zones. It's big, very big." Min Su walked to his command chair and sat down. He tapped a control. "GA, we have a burrower. Vector to your position, Sector 7 deep. It'll breach in approximately 3 minutes. The locals are in its path. On the ground, GA's voice came back, clear and unruffled. Understood, redirecting. To Alara, who was trying to herd a group of crying children, it was all a blur of noise and fear. Then she saw the Deathworlders move. They didn't run in panic. They moved with a coordinated speed that was terrifying. They were heading for a maintenance entrance to the lower levels. Where are they going? Alara asked one of the armored figures as he passed. The soldier's helmet turned towards her. A male voice, young, replied, "There's a big one underground. We're going to say hello." And then he was gone, following his sergeant into the dark. Alara stood amidst the ruins of her world, the deafening cracks of human weapons echoing around her. She had prayed for warriors from the stars. She had gotten them. And as she watched them descend into the dark to fight a monster to save her people, she felt a new, complicated emotion cutting through her terror. It wasn't just fear of them anymore. It was the chilling, awe-inspiring realization of what they were. They weren't just strong. They were willing. The heavens had sent not angels, but something far more visceral. They had sent butchers to do a surgeon's work, and for the first time, the Varak swarm was not advancing. It was being pushed back. The silence on the bridge of the Aurelian flagship, Starlight's Grace, was thick enough to choke on. Counselor Ilara watched the main view screen, her 4 slender hands trembling in her lap. Where hours ago there had been a fleet, a proud assembly of ships from a dozen peaceful worlds. Now there was only debris and the occasional sickening flash of light as a life pod was vaporized. The Volux swarm moved through the wreckage near Aurelia 3 like a school of metallic piranha. Their ships were organic horrors, grown, not built, all chitinous plates and pulsating purple energy. They didn't communicate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply consumed, stripping planets bare of all life and resources before moving on. And now, they were at the doorstep of Aurelia 3, the heart of the Orion Concord. "Report," Alara said, her voice a soft melody, so different from the harsh crackle of dying ships on the combs. "The last of the Delta fighters are gone." "Counselor," Captain Riland said, his feathered crest lying flat against his skull in despair, "the orbital defense grid will fail within the hour. The swarm. They adapt to our weapons faster than we can cycle frequencies." A soft chime echoed through the bridge. It was the sound of the hyperpulse transmitter finally finishing its cycle. Alara had given the order 30 minutes ago. A general distress call, blasted across every known frequency into the depths of the galaxy. "We, the Orion Concord, beg for aid. Any who hear this, we are the last of our alliance. The Vorlix swarm consumes all. We plead for intervention. Save us." It was a prayer, not a strategy. Every civilized species in the galactic arm was either already broken by the swarm or hiding, hoping the storm would pass them by. There was no one left to come. "Anything on the comes?" she asked, not daring to hope. "Nothing, Counselor." The communications officer, a young Aurelian named Lena, replied. "The channels are empty." Alara closed her large, luminous eyes. Her people were poets, artists, philosophers. They lived in graceful cities that floated on gentle winds. Their greatest conflict in the last century had been a debate over symphony composition. They had no warriors, only peacekeepers. Against the raw, hungry violence of the Vorlux, they were like glass against a hammer. "Prepare the evacuation shuttles for the planetary leadership," Relane said quietly, his voice heavy with shame. "We will hold the line as long as we can." Alara shook her head, a human gesture she'd picked up from cultural files. "No, we sent the call. We will wait for the answer. To run now is to tell every soul on Aurelia 3 that the heavens are truly empty." The bridge crew watched her, their fear tinged with a fragile admiration. They waited. On the screen, the green and blue marble of their homeworld hung, beautiful and utterly defenseless. The first wave of Vorlix landers, spore-like pods, began their fiery descent towards the surface. Then, a new light pulsed on the sensor panel. A sharp, insistent beep broke the silence. "Contact!" Lena shouted, her voice cracking. "A hypersignature. Massive. It's at the edge of the system." A wave of desperate relief washed over the bridge. "Identify them." "Who is it?" Relaine barked out. Lena's hands flew over her console, then slowed. Her crest, which had begun to rise, went rigid. The signature matches no known configuration in the Concord database. The energy output is staggering. Its reading is 3 vessels. Their hull composition is unknown. Density is off the scale. Where are they from? Elara asked, leaning forward. The officer checked the vector. The color drained from her lavender skin. The signal origin is triangulated. It's coming from the quarantine sector. The one with the Deathworld warnings. The word landed like a physical blow. Deathworld. A classification of such extreme dread, it was rarely spoken aloud. It referred to planets of such savage, unforgiving nature that they produced life forms of unimaginable resilience and brutality. The galaxy had cordoned off that sector generations ago. The stories were myths, nightmares used to frighten children, worlds of crushing gravity, constant storms, predators that could think, and the most feared monsters of all the ones who had survived it all. Deathworlders? Relaine whispered, his feathers bristling. No, they cannot be. The quarantine is absolute. Another chime from the comms. This was not a general broadcast. It was a direct, tight beam transmission to the Starlight's Grace. The data stream was crude, compressed, and wrapped in layers of encryption that Lina's system brute-forced open with shocking ease. A voice came through. It was low, gravelly, speaking in heavily accented, but perfectly understandable Aurelian Common. There was no video feed. Orion Concord vessel. We have received your request for aid. The voice held no warmth, no polite diplomacy. It was a statement of fact, flat and solid. Identify yourselves. Relaine demanded, trying to project authority. A pause. You may call us the response. Do not target your weapons on our vessels. Do not attempt to scan us aggressively. Aid is inbound. Ada, 6 minutes. The transmission cut off. They are giving us orders? Relaine hissed. Elara stared at the sensor screen. The 3 new contacts were moving. They weren't using the elegant, curving FTL hops of Concord ships. They moved in a straight, brutal line towards Aurelia 3, sublight engines flaring with a raw, blue-white power that seemed to tear at space itself. They were boxy, angular things, covered in thick gray armor plating that was pitted and scarred. They looked less like starships and more like flying fortresses or tombs. Counselor, the Vorlux have detected them. Lena reported. A swarm detachment is breaking off to intercept. On the screen, a cloud of 100 Varax skirmish ships, each the size of a Concord cruiser, swarmed towards the 3 approaching vessels. The Aurelians watched, hearts in their throats. This would be a slaughter. The Deathworlders would be destroyed before they could even help, proving the futility of their plea. The lead Deathworlder ship did not change course. It did not fire energy weapons. As the first wave of Varax ships closed, unleashing a torrent of bioplasma, the human ship simply took the hits. The searing green fire splashed across its bow armor, scorching it but not penetrating. The ship didn't even shudder. Then it returned fire, not with elegant plasma bolts or disintegrator beams. From ports along its flanks, it launched a storm of solid projectiles slender, tungsten spears moving at a fraction of light speed. They punched through the organic hulls of the Vorex ships with terrifying ease. There were no explosions, just sudden, silent holes, and then the Varax vessels going dark and tumbling off course. It was mechanical, efficient, brutal. The other two Deathworlder ships joined in, forming a simple, tight triangle formation. They plowed through the Varax detachment like a wedge through rotten wood, leaving a trail of shattered, lifeless husks in their wake. The bridge of the Starlight's Grace was utterly silent. The crew watched, stunned. They had never seen warfare like this. It wasn't a battle of energy shields and tactical maneuvers. It was like watching a force of nature. By the heavens, Relaine breathed, all defiance gone from his voice. Alara felt a cold knot form in her stomach, different from the fear of the Varax. This was the fear of the unknown, of having opened a door to something they could not possibly understand. They had begged the heavens for a savior. And now, 3 avenging angels, carved from stone and forged in fire, were answering their call. She could only watch as they continued their relentless advance towards her dying world, wondering what, exactly, she had just invited in.